The Toronto Maple Leafs have recently had a very weird but successful pattern. It just seems that one of their players has a great year every season. Austin Matthews was born, then came the rise of Mitch Marner, along with the signing of John Tavares. Then Matthews had his career-defining season last year, and we saw the rise of Michael Bunting as well. This year, guess whose turn it is? It's a guy who's finally taken off to a point where he's earned the respect of Leafs fans themselves after having somewhat of a harsh time prior to 2021. Let's talk about the 8th overall pick in 2014, William Nylander. Now, William Nylander, don't get me wrong, he's one of the most underrated players in the National Hockey League, but he does have some issues that have made the fans question his future in Toronto. He's been subject to a lot of criticism over the years, and none of this has started in recent times. It's been going on for nearly 4 to 5 years, as Nylander has been a Leaf for 8 years. There have been some really odd fans just blaming the team's misfortunes on Nylander specifically, and I'd assume that was due to his inability to be a physical player or his lack of defensive play in those zones, things that Marner and Matthews somewhat had, and that's kind of why he was just an odd man out so many times. But it seemed as if Nylander isn't bothered by the noise outside of the rink. Despite the criticism, he remained calm and composed, and best of all, super confident, which is not going to lie, exactly what an NHL star needs, especially when you're going into a huge market like Toronto. He began his tenure in the NHL when the Leafs were beginning a new era of hockey. The organization had turned from the Kessel, Lupul, and Bozak era, where the Leafs were at the bottom of the league for 3 consecutive years, into a team led by new faces in Matthews, Marner, and Riley, leading Toronto to a playoff spot in 2017, and having made the playoffs every year since. Nylander began his tenure during the 2015-16 season when Toronto was really just at the bottom. He would score his first career goal that year, and it was assisted by Brooks Leach, which is kind of interesting because Brooks Leach actually got an assist on William Nylander's father, Michael Nylander's last NHL goal. Just a very funny coincidence, but Nylander finished off with 13 points in 22 games. Since he played such a few amount of games that year, Nylander became eligible for the Calder Trophy during the 2016-17 season. He took his game to a way new level with 61 points in 82 games and would end up finishing 6th in the Calder voting. Austin Matthews, his teammate, would eventually win it. But then a year later, he finishes with 61 points again, but this time in 81 games, just proving his worth to this team, as well as his consistency. Then came that struggle I was talking about earlier, where he completely just lost his momentum and would be a 20 to 50 point player for those 3 years, until last year where he shot up again and got 80 points in 81 games, just so close to a point per game rate. Over the years, he has scored 172 goals, 250 assists, and 422 points. He is very close to 500 points and will definitely get it before he's, say, 28 years old. He's 26 right now and turns 27 in May. But talking about this season specifically, Nylander has been arguably the Leafs' second best and most consistent player. I'd say number 1 has to be Mitch Marner, but Nylander's career highs in goals and most likely career highs in assists and points have given Sheldon Keefe the ability to trust him. He leads the team in goals, which makes him a much more durable guy, and certainly a guy who the Leafs can count on if Austin Matthews isn't really playing the way he usually is, which could be likely considering he's been battling injuries for a chunk of this season. However, going back to Sheldon Keefe and the whole trust thing, I don't think I've emphasized the importance of the trust Nylander has given Keefe. I'd assume the Leafs head coach would like to put Nylander in all sorts of situations, from man advantage to penalty kill to being on the top line at even strength. The dude will be everywhere. Due to his stellar performances this year, he's increased his average ice time significantly to a point where at 18 minutes and 32 seconds per game, he ranks 3rd on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Only Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews average more, and it's not by much. However, it kind of just makes sense why he's near those two, especially Matthews, and it's because he plays on the same line as Austin Matthews. Plus, Nylander has been given that sort of ice time to create these chances of scoring. He takes advantage of the chances he's producing, and his career home-away splits will show that he's a player who does extremely well when he's playing at Scotiabank Arena, as 50 of the 79 points he scored has come in Toronto. Considering where Toronto is in the standings, this could very well benefit them because they will be most likely playing the Game 5s and Game 7s in Toronto, so they will have Nylander at his best. We already talked about Austin Matthews, but William Nylander's contract also expires on July 1st, 2024, as both players are set to become unrestricted free agents. Based on the way things have gone for both players, Matthews will most likely be the number 1 priority for the team, probably looking to get an extension above $12 million annually. This could leave the Leafs with nearly no salary cap space left, hence leaving Nylander on the outside looking in if this cap space situation doesn't change. For the 2024-2025 season, Toronto already has $34.6 million in cap space locked up. Let's assume the cap space increases by $1 million in the next 2 years. That would make the current limit of $82.5 million increase to $84.5 million by 2024. A solid range for Nylander could be around, say, $9 million for 8 years, hence a $72 million deal. Matthews, as mentioned before, would be way more expensive, nearing the $12 to $13.5 million range. Let's say Matthews gets $13.5 million a year. That would not only make him the highest paid player in the league, but would also leave Toronto with approximately $49.9 million to work with until the end of 2025. The issues unfortunately do not stop here. Mitch Marner and John Tavares will become available for contract negotiations come July 2024, and we should expect Marner to get paid around the $11.5 to $13 million range, similar to Matthews. Tavares, on the other hand, will either land his money's worth somewhere else or will take a pay cut to stay in Toronto. Given how he literally chose the Maple Leafs as childhood team over the Islanders, a team he'd captained for so many years despite telling Long Island he'd return, I'm sure he's going to be happy to stay with the Toronto Maple Leafs. He's been a solid captain for Toronto despite minimal success in the playoffs. I'd say Tavares lands a contract within a 4-year, $21 million deal where he's getting paid $5.2 million a year. Obviously not a bad deal whatsoever. But let's say the Leafs don't really care about Nylander come 2024, and they urge him to test free agency that summer. They could always do what Calgary did to Matthew Tkachuk and make him available, but the Leafs are seriously losing on a darn good player if Nylander keeps up this great pace. Regardless of what people may think, he's one heck of a hockey player and can certainly get Toronto to the second or third round. So let me know your comments on a potential Nylander extension. What do you guys think of it? Do you like the idea of it? Yes or no? Let me know. Otherwise, thank you guys for tuning in and have a wonderful day.